think some people have been wondering how I do my setup if I'm going to pre-record a lecture. Of course, we can pre-record a lecture sitting, but that's sort of something that I'm trying to say we shouldn't be doing as much. And if we're going to pre-record a PowerPoint presentation where we just sit and we narrate that and then students can look at that, that's another matter. But now it's the question of the setup when it comes time to making a film ahead of time, a pre-recorded lecture. And since I don't have a dedicated studio, I use the living room sometimes, or other places. And now everyone will see the setup, what I do. I find that an ironing board is a good height if you're going to stand and have notes, and it feels sort of like a podium of some sort. Oh, and also this video would have been impossible if I didn't have two cameras with video functions. So I'm going to be using one to film the other, and the one that I'm going to be filming this on, showing the setup, doesn't have good audio input, so that's why I sound a bit like inside of a tin can. So you can see here, this is the top of the tripod. I have a mini tripod right here. And instead of traditional screw to be able to screw your camera on, I have a so-called Arca Swiss plate. It's a quick kind of thing to use. So I have no idea. I hope this turns out okay. I'll sort of do it backwards. On the bottom of the camera is a mount that you screw on, so that way you only have to screw it on once. You slide this into the mount, and then you screw here. And both tripods and both cameras have the same mount. And now here I am ready to see what I see. And it's probably not pointed the right way, but that's something else that will be coming in a moment. It's amazing how much stuff you need. This is what is referred to as a shock mount. You put that on top of your so-called hot shoe, where you might have a flash mounted. The reason I'm doing this is that I don't want the microphone, in this case it's a Zoom H1N, I don't want the microphone to be affected by anything that the camera is doing, and this is supposed to minimize that. Unfortunately, I don't have a system for clipping here, and I don't know quite how I'm going to do that. So this is the sort of old-fashioned way of doing it. So 1900s. We want to have it facing in the direction of where I will be talking. Of course, I'm going to turn this at the right point. Next, I need to connect up, sorry everything is black, I need to connect up the camera. With the microphone. Once I was using the batteries in the Zoom, and the batteries were exhausted. They usually have about a 10-hour life, and I didn't realize how far they had gone. There is on the Zoom a display to show you how much battery is left, but I was in a hurry and didn't look. So Everything's black on black here today, even the t-shirt. I now have a charger, or in other words, I can run the microphone off an electrical outlet. And let's see, it's working. I just realized maybe I needed to see what it looked like. And here's the switch. Power on, and so forth. So I've gotten this far so far. Now I need to disguise the ironing board. So that'll be about right. And I'll have to adjust the camera that's going to do the recording to make sure that I get no or almost no ironing board in the picture. Some other things I need to do. Am I going to need more light? We can see on the left I have an old tripod where I have reused it as instead of using a light stand. It's very convenient to move the light up and down. And it can be run by battery, but I also have an electric outlet so I can run that as well. Generally speaking, I don't use that to provide the primary lighting source. I hope that there's enough light from the ceiling and from outside. Generally speaking, lights in the ceiling are not good for making video productions. It would be better to have two lights at about the same height as your head or your chest, one to the left and one to the right, illuminating you from both sides. But I feel cheap and I don't want to spend too much money, which I've already spent, of course, so that I can illuminate myself. So let's see what the difference is. You'll be able to see me with this camera walking there and see what I look like in the face, because that's the most important. So let's pretend that I'm holding my lecture, I'm walking around, I'm moving around like this, I have my script or notes there, and I can stand on one side, and in post-production I can add text, just like a PowerPoint that I'd be adding points, or I could stand on this side instead, or I could stand in the middle and have pros and cons, or I could stand to the side and let a picture appear, and so forth. It, in a sense, combines holding a lecture in a classroom where the film and the PowerPoint and the speaker can all be put into one, if you have enough time and you think that you can invest this time in a lecture which will withstand the test of time. If I do this once, my lecture should be able to be seen by the students 3 or 4 years, or maybe even longer into the future. The content is not going to change all that much, and then I can have more interactive lectures in other ways instead. Let's turn on a little light to see if that makes any difference. Now what I generally do, and I can't see what it's looking like here because I'm recording this for you at a distance, it's the wrong kind of camera for this, what I generally do is I record a few seconds with the camera, see how kind of lighting it is, or perhaps I take pictures of myself and make adjustments to the lighting. As it is now, it's on the lowest lighting level. So yeah, some script, but we have some other things here. What we can see here, we can look here. To the right are spare batteries for this camera. And in the little pouch are spare batteries for the other camera, which is the main video camera. I have a lavalier mic, which would go into the video camera plugged in. I could have a wireless mic, but I've heard people that have recorded without realizing that the battery in the wireless was, and so they had to do it all over again. And that's awful, to have to go back if you're outdoors and do a new take. I could put this on front of the microphone right there. Let's see if I got it right. Yep, good. If I wanted to. And then I have the so-called wind protector, sometimes referred to as a dead cat, that would be put onto it. It's like a huge one. Here I am indoors, so I'm probably going to be sticking to rather relatively short focal lengths. I use a micro four thirds system, which means that the focal lengths on the lenses are different than if you're using a full frame or an APS-C camera. So I would be sticking somewhere between 12 and 20, perhaps 12 and 20 millimeters, which would be 24 to 40 or so, when it would be a full frame camera equivalent. If Santa is very nice, or if I'm very nice and Santa is nice to me, I'm in the market for a 15 millimeter prime, which has a very low minimum aperture. Or if Santa is really nice to me, I think I'm looking out for a 8 to 18, so I can get much closer if needed when filming and filming other things. But the aperture, the lowest minimum aperture, isn't quite as low for that. Things to store the lenses in. And in a pinch, if you need to store a camera in it or something like that. Yeah, I think we've come rather far now. I'm not going to record myself, recording myself, so to speak. I'm not up to that today. I'll do that some other time when I'm not as much in a rush. So the silver-colored or whatever tripod is something that I had from back in the days before I had a digital camera, a film camera, which at some point broke or I lost interest in or whatever it was, but I've kept it all this time. Nice to be able to recycle, reuse things, used for the lighting as needed. The first tripod I bought was that little one that we see on the table. It's perfect if you're going to be recording yourself sitting down or standing, if you can put it up on something like a table. And then recently I bought a considerably more large tripod, which also has a sort of a panorama head. And you can see that they both have these so-called Arca Swiss compatible, which makes things much easier to set up and break down. Not break down as in terms of break, but disassemble. Yeah, one of the most important things I forgot, I don't wear a t-shirt when well, I am wearing a t-shirt, but I don't have just a t-shirt on when I'm lecturing. And I always have something on down here, so I'm not walking around in shorts or something like that, unless it's the summertime. So I almost always throw on one of several shirts like this. Not this, like that. I'm more prepared, tuck it in and so forth, so I look better dressed, as if I was actually in the university and not at home with just a t-shirt that shows that I have sponsored something on it. So, that was the setup. I made that setup a few months ago before I was going to record a lecture, and more or less everything, the equipment and so forth, is more or less the same. But I don't want to make the lecture any longer, or this video any longer. If you liked it, please click on the like button, consider subscribing, consider clicking the bell to get notifications, let your colleagues know if you think this was something interesting that they might be interested in. And at the very end, I'll have a list of all of my equipment, some of which you haven't seen in that setup.